Royal Caribbean might be one of the most loved cruise lines in the world, but it is also one of the most complained about. Some passengers get off the ship saying, "That was the best cruise we have ever taken." Others get off angry, frustrated, exhausted, and wondering why nobody warned them before they booked. And that is what makes Royal Caribbean so interesting, because this cruise line can be amazing. It can also drive people absolutely mad. And if you pick the wrong ship, sail at the wrong time, misunderstand how things work, or get caught by the ugly side of the experience, your dream cruise can start feeling very different from the one in the brochure. So in this video, we are going through Royal Caribbean cruises, the good, the bad, and the ugly truth. But we are not starting with the shiny happy part. First, we are going into the bad, the frustrating things passengers often do not realize until they are already on board. Then, we are going into the ugly, the parts that make some passengers angry enough to say, "Never again." And then we are finishing with the good, because whether people love Royal Caribbean, defend it, complain about it, or swear they're done with it forever, there is a reason this cruise line still has some of the most loyal fans at sea. So as you watch, I want you to think about where you stand. Are you team big ship? Team smaller ship? Team Royal Caribbean forever? Team never again? Or are you somewhere in the middle, where you loved half of it and wanted to complain about the other half before dessert? And if you have sailed Royal Caribbean before, put your ship in the comments and tell us what your cruise really was. Good, bad, ugly, or somehow all three. Because Royal Caribbean is not boring. It is exciting, chaotic, clever, frustrating, impressive, and sometimes absolutely brilliant. But before you book it, defend it, or write it off completely, you need to know the full truth. So let's get into it. The bad. Number 1. The Royal Caribbean name does not guarantee the same cruise experience. This is one of the first things people need to understand before they book Royal Caribbean. The name on the side of the ship might be the same, but the cruise you get can feel completely different depending on the ship you choose, and that is where some passengers get caught. They book Royal Caribbean because they have heard the name, they have seen the big ships online, they have watched videos of huge pool decks, crazy slides, bright promenades, aqua theater shows, restaurants everywhere, and families walking around looking like they have just entered a floating theme park with a buffet. Then, they find a sailing that works. Maybe the price looks good. Maybe the dates are perfect. Maybe the ship leaves from a port that is easy for them to get to. So they book it, and technically, yes, they booked Royal Caribbean. But they may not have booked the Royal Caribbean they were picturing, because Icon of the Seas is not the same kind of experience as Grandeur of the Seas. Wonder of the Seas is not the same kind of experience as Vision of the Seas. Utopia of the Seas is not going to feel the same as Jewel of the Seas, and sailing on Symphony, Harmony, Oasis, or Allure is very different from sailing on Rhapsody, Enchantment, Brilliance, Serenade, Explorer, Adventure, Liberty, or Voyager. That does not mean one is automatically good and the other is automatically bad. It means they are different holidays. Some passengers step onto Icon, Wonder, or Utopia and say, "This is incredible. There is so much to do, I don't even know where to start." Other passengers step onto those same big ships and think, "Why does my relaxing cruise feel like I have accidentally booked a theme park with cabins?" Then you get the opposite. Some cruisers step onto Grandeur, Vision, Rhapsody, or one of the older ships and love the quieter feel. They like the smaller size. They like being able to walk around without needing a map, a protein bar, and a motivational speech. But someone else may step onto that same ship and think, "Hang on, where are the big slides? Where are the massive shows? Where is the Royal Caribbean I saw online?" That is the tricky part. Royal Caribbean has become a cruise line with very different personalities. There is the giant floating resort version, there is the family fun version, there is the classic cruise version, there is the port-focused version, there is the "we booked this because it was cheaper and now we're finding out why" version. And there is also the version that experienced cruisers love because they knew exactly what they were booking. That is why the same cruise line can get completely different reviews. One passenger says, "Best cruise ever." Another says, "Never again." One person loves the big ship because there is always something happening. Another person hates it because there is always something happening. One person loves the smaller ship because it feels calm and easy. Another person thinks it feels old, limited, and nothing like the Royal Caribbean adverts. And honestly, both sides can be right. They are just reacting to different versions of Royal Caribbean. This is why ship choice matters so much. Not just the price, not just the ports, not just the brand, the actual ship. Because if you book the wrong ship for your style, the cruise starts with a problem before anything has even gone wrong. You might spend the week comparing the ship you got with the ship you thought you were getting. And that is never a good place to start. Now, to be fair, Royal Caribbean's variety is also one of its biggest strengths, and we'll get to that properly in the good section. But here in the bad section, this is the warning. Royal Caribbean can disappoint you if you assume every ship gives the same experience. Later, in the ugly section, we will talk about what happens when that disappointment becomes something bigger. When crowds, queues, rules, cabins, noise, and onboard problems start making passengers feel like they chose the wrong holiday altogether. But this first point is the warning before all of that. Do not just book Royal Caribbean. Book the right Royal Caribbean. Because sometimes, the cruise line is not the problem. The ship is. Number 2. The crowds do not always show up where you expect them. One of the funny things about Royal Caribbean is that the crowds do not always appear where passengers expect them. People look at a ship like Icon of the Seas, Wonder of the Seas, Utopia of the Seas, Symphony, Harmony, Oasis, Allure, Odyssey, Anthem, or Quantum, and think, well, the ship is enormous, so surely everyone will spread out. And sometimes they do. That is one of the clever things Royal Caribbean can do really well. On the bigger ships, passengers are pulled in different directions all day. Some are at the pool, some are watching shows, some are at trivia, some are eating pizza, some are at the kids' club, some are in the casino, some are looking for coffee, and some are walking around pretending they know where they're going. The ship can feel surprisingly smooth when everyone is spread out. But then, there are certain moments when the whole ship seems to wake up at the same time and make the exact same decision. Breakfast, elevators, the windjammer, the gangway in port, the pool deck on a sea day, the promenade when something is happening. And suddenly, that huge ship does not feel quite as huge anymore. This is where passengers often get surprised, because they may not feel crowded all day. They might walk around in the afternoon and think, this is fine. I don't know what everyone complains about. Then, the next morning, they wander into the buffet at peak time, and it feels like the entire ship has formed a breakfast committee. You are holding a plate. Someone has stopped right in front of the toast. A child is making a very serious waffle decision. Someone is trying to carry coffee through the crowd like they are transporting dangerous chemicals. And now, you are circling for a table, pretending to be relaxed, while quietly wondering if sitting on the floor would be frowned upon. That is the kind of crowding people remember. Not because the whole cruise was packed every second, but because certain pressure points can feel intense. A lot of passengers mention the same things again and again. They talk about the buffet being hard at the wrong time, elevators being packed after shows, pool decks being busy, and getting off the ship in port feeling slower than they expected. Others say they sailed the same class of ship and barely noticed the crowds at all. And honestly, both sides can be right. It depends on the ship, the sailing, the weather, the school holidays, the passenger mix, and whether you accidentally choose the same lunchtime as everyone else with a pulse. And this is not only a megaship problem. On smaller ships, the crowding can happen differently. A smaller ship might have fewer people overall, but it also has fewer venues to absorb them. If the weather turns bad and everyone comes indoors, or there is one popular lounge, one busy buffet time, or one main activity, the ship can still feel crowded in certain spots. That is why the real problem is not just ship size. The real problem is where the bottlenecks happen. Royal Caribbean can build a ship that holds thousands of passengers, but there are still moments when everyone wants the same elevator, the same breakfast, the same pool chair, the same gangway, or the same table by the window. And this is where a cruise can go from, look how much there is to do, to, why is everyone standing exactly where I need to be? Later in the ugly section, we will talk about when crowds become more than just annoying, especially when they turn into chair hogs, packed adult-only areas, kids running through quiet spaces, and passengers feeling like rules are not being enforced. But here in the bad section, the warning is simple. Royal Caribbean can handle crowds beautifully in some areas and then feel overwhelmed in others. A ship can be massive and still have moments where you are stuck behind a family of 6, 2 strollers, 1 mobility scooter, 3 drinks, and someone loudly insisting, "No, I'm sure this is the right way," while walking confidently in the wrong direction. That does not mean the ship is bad. It means you need to understand the rhythm of it. Go to the buffet a little earlier or later. Use the stairs when you can. Avoid the pool deck at the worst times if crowds drive you mad. Give yourself extra time after shows. And if a space looks packed, sometimes the smartest cruise move is to walk away and come back later like a person who values their own sanity. Because Royal Caribbean gives passengers a lot of choices. The catch is that thousands of other people may want the same choices at the same time. Number 3. The app can make your relaxing cruise feel like homework. Royal Caribbean can be a brilliant cruise line, but sometimes the best version of the cruise feels like it is hiding inside the app. And if you do not know that early, you can feel behind before the ship has even left the dock. Because a cruise sounds like it should be simple. You book it, you pack, you board, you eat too much, you look at the ocean, and you tell yourself you're going to use the stairs all week until day 2 proves your knees were not consulted. That is the dream. But on Royal Caribbean, especially on the bigger and busier ships, there can be a lot to organize. You may need to think about check-in times, dining times, my time dining, show reservations, activity bookings, cruise planner prices, specialty restaurants, excursions, app messages, and what is happening at what time. For experienced Royal Caribbean cruisers, this is just part of the game. They know when to check the app. They know what usually needs booking. They know how to watch for cruise planner sales. They know which dining times disappear first. They know that "we'll figure it out when we get on board" can sometimes be famous last words. But first-time cruisers do not always know that. They might get on board thinking they can just wander around and decide things as they go. And on some ships, or on quieter sailings, that can work perfectly fine. But on a busier Royal Caribbean cruise, especially on a ship packed with families, first-timers, and people trying to squeeze every dollar of value out of the week, that relaxed approach can backfire. You open the app and discover the good dining times are awkward, the popular show is full, the activity you wanted has a line, or the thing you thought would be easy now requires planning, timing, and the emotional strength of someone organizing a school camp. That is when the cruise can start to feel less like a holiday and more like you have accidentally accepted a part-time admin job at sea. And the annoying thing is that the app itself is not the villain. The app can actually be very useful. You can check what is happening, message other guests, look at your onboard account, find activities, see dining options, and avoid missing things. In the good section, we will talk about the ways Royal Caribbean can be much easier when you know the system, because some of those little tips genuinely make a difference. But here in the bad section, the frustration is that not everyone wants their cruise to feel like it needs managing. Some passengers want to wander after dinner and see what is happening. They do not want to plan their fun like a business meeting with a sunset view. Some people want to relax by the pool without worrying that they should be somewhere else. They do not want to keep checking the schedule and thinking, "Wait, is that the only time they do that?" Some people thought, my time dining meant they could just turn up whenever they felt hungry, not discover that my time can sometimes mean whatever time is left if you did not plan ahead. And that is where Royal Caribbean can frustrate people. The ships offer a lot, which is one of the reasons people love them. But the more there is to do, the more it can feel like you need to keep up. You start with a relaxing cruise and suddenly you're checking dinner, a show, trivia, a sail, an excursion time, and whether your family has disappeared into 3 different parts of the ship. At some point, you look at your phone and think, why am I stressed? I am literally floating past an island. That is the strange bad side of having so many choices. Choice is great until it becomes another thing to manage. Some passengers love it. They like having a plan. They like locking things in. They like knowing what they are doing each night. Other passengers just want to be left alone with a drink and not be asked to emotionally commit to a showtime before they have even finished unpacking. So, if you are sailing Royal Caribbean, especially on a larger or newer ship, do not ignore the app and hope for the best. Check it early. See what needs booking. Look at dining times. Watch the cruise planner. Ask questions if you are unsure. Because Royal Caribbean can be wonderful when you know how the system works. But if you do not know the system, it can feel like everyone else got the instruction manual and you were handed a luggage tag, a deck plan, and good luck. Number 4. The food can feel average when the ship looks amazing. Food on Royal Caribbean is one of those topics that can start an argument faster than someone saving a pool chair with one lonely flip-flop. Some passengers love it. Some think it is perfectly fine. Some say it depends on the ship. And some say the food is the one thing that did not match the size, shine, and excitement of the ship they booked. That is where the bad side comes in. Because when you walk onto a Royal Caribbean ship with huge entertainment venues, glowing bars, beautiful public spaces, big pool decks, massive slides, music, lights, and a promenade that feels like a small city, your expectations naturally go up. You start thinking, if the ship looks this impressive, dinner must be impressive too. Then dinner arrives, and sometimes it is just fine. Not terrible, not amazing, just fine. And on land, fine food is usually not a disaster, but on a cruise, food is a big part of the holiday. You're thinking about breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, dessert, coffee, pizza, and that extra little plate you definitely did not need but somehow collected on the way past. So when the food feels average, passengers notice. Some complain that the main dining room does not feel as special as it used to. They expected a sit-down dinner that felt a bit grand, but instead, they feel like the menu is smaller. The food is rushed, or the meal is more ordinary than they imagined. Others say the buffet can be the real test of patience. The windjammer can be great at the right time, but at the wrong time, it can feel like everyone on board suddenly decided they needed eggs, toast, fruit, coffee, and emotional support at the same moment. You're trying to choose breakfast while someone is hovering behind you, someone else has stopped in front of the bacon, and a family is debating pancakes like they are signing an international treaty. And if you finally get your food but cannot find a table, the meal already feels less relaxing before you have even sat down. Then there is specialty dining. Royal Caribbean has paid restaurants that some passengers absolutely love, but others walk out thinking, was that really worth the extra money? That is a problem, because once passengers pay extra, expectations rise. If the steak is brilliant, great. If the pasta is ordinary, the service is slow, or the food does not feel much better than the included dining, people feel annoyed because now it is not just dinner. It is dinner with a receipt. Some passengers also complain about room service or late-night food options, especially if they expected more variety after hours. That can be frustrating on a big ship where everything looks so full of life during the day, but later at night you suddenly realize your exciting food adventure has turned into pizza, snacks, or whatever is still available. And to be fair, Royal Caribbean does have food wins. Plenty of cruisers love Park Cafe, Cafe 270, Sorrento's Pizza, fresh egg stations, some specialty restaurants, and those coconut cookies people talk about like they are a family heirloom. We will get to the good food moments properly in the good section, because there are definitely passengers who know exactly where to go and what to order. But here in the bad section, the warning is this. Royal Caribbean's ships can look spectacular, but the food does not always feel spectacular. For some passengers, it is good enough. For others, it is one of the biggest letdowns. And that can be especially disappointing when everything around you looks like a floating resort, but your dinner feels like it quietly came from a hotel conference where nobody wanted to upset the budget. Number 5. The extras can make a cruise feel less included than people expected. This is one of the bad parts of Royal Caribbean that catches people out fast. You book the cruise, you look at the ship, you see the pools, the shows, the restaurants, the ports, the ocean, and you think, this actually looks like good value. And to be fair, it can be. A Royal Caribbean cruise can be a fantastic holiday without buying every extra. You can eat included food, watch included entertainment, use the included pools, enjoy the ship, visit ports, and have a great time without turning your onboard account into a crime scene. But Royal Caribbean is very good at tempting you with the upgraded version of the holiday. That is where passengers start to feel the bad side. Maybe it starts with Wi-Fi, because someone needs to check emails, message family, or keep teenagers alive with internet access. Then, the drink package starts looking tempting because nobody wants to keep doing mental maths every time they order a cocktail, coffee, soda, or bottle of water. Then, specialty dining appears, and suddenly the included dining room feels slightly less exciting because now there is a steakhouse, an Italian restaurant, sushi, seafood, or some other paid venue whispering, "Come on, you're on holiday." Then the shore excursions start looking safer through the cruise line. The spa has a special offer. The photos look better than expected. The arcade is calling the kids like a tiny casino with brighter colors. And if you are going to Perfect Day at Coco Cay, the private island can come with its own extra spending temptations as well. That is how the cost builds. Not usually in one huge shocking moment, it builds in little decisions. One coffee here, one photo there, one dinner upgrade, one internet package, one, we might as well, we're already here. And by the end of the cruise, the onboard account is sitting there looking like it has been training for this moment all week. This is not about saying every extra is bad. Some are absolutely worth it for the right passenger. A drink package might make sense for someone who drinks enough and wants peace of mind. Wi-Fi might be essential for someone who has work or family at home. A cruise line excursion might be the smarter choice in a port where timing is tight. A specialty dinner might be perfect for a birthday, anniversary, or one night where you want something different. The problem is when passengers assume the cruise will feel mostly included, then realize that the most advertised version of the experience often comes with price tags attached. That is where some people start using the phrase nickel and diming. Not because the base cruise has no value, it does, but because Royal Caribbean has a way of putting the upgraded version right in front of you. You can have the included version, but the paid version is always nearby, smiling politely and holding a card machine. And that can be annoying when passengers thought they had already paid for the holiday. Some people are fine with that. They like choosing what they pay for. They would rather start with a cheaper cruise fare and add only what they want. Others feel frustrated because the cruise they imagined keeps getting separated into little paid pieces. The important thing is knowing this before you go. If you want the basic included experience, you can still have a great cruise. But you need to be ready to say no without feeling like you are missing out. If you want the upgraded experience, budget for it before you sail, because those extras can add up quickly. And later in the ugly section, we will talk about the harsher side of fees, fine print, refunds, and onboard charges, because that is where passengers can go from annoyed to genuinely angry. But here in the bad section, this is the warning. Royal Caribbean can be a great cruise. It can also make you want the version that costs more. And if you are not paying attention, the cruise you booked and the cruise you actually paid for by the end can feel like two completely different holidays. Number 6. The cabin you choose can change the whole mood of the cruise. A cruise cabin can seem like a small thing when you are booking. After all, a lot of people say, we won't be in the room much anyway. And that sounds reasonable, until the room becomes the place where you are trying to sleep, shower, get changed, escape the crowds, find your missing shoe, and recover from the buffet decision you made with far too much confidence. That is when the cabin starts to matter. On Royal Caribbean, the cabin experience can vary a lot depending on the ship, the age of the room, the location, and the type of cabin you choose. Some passengers open the door and think, perfect, this is exactly what we need. Others open the door and have that tiny sinking feeling of, oh, this looked a bit better online? Maybe the room feels older than expected. Maybe the bathroom is tiny. Maybe the shower curtain is trying to become part of the family. Maybe storage is awkward. Maybe the balcony has an obstruction. Maybe the cabin is far from the elevators, and by day 3, the walk back to the room feels like you are training for a sponsored event. Or maybe the biggest problem is noise. That is where connecting cabins can catch people out. Some passengers book or receive a connecting cabin and do not realize that the door between rooms can sometimes let through more sound than a normal wall. If the neighbors are quiet, you may never care. But if the people next door are loud, have kids, watch TV late, argue, laugh, slam drawers, or have full volume conversations at midnight, your cabin can suddenly feel less private. And the awkward part is that you are not in a hotel where you can easily escape. You are on a ship. Your room is your room. Your neighbor is your neighbor. Congratulations, you may now be sharing your cruise with people you never actually invited. Some passengers have said the wrong cabin made the whole cruise feel harder, not because the ship was terrible, but because every day started and ended with the same little annoyance. A slow drain, a worn bathroom, a noisy balcony divider, a strange clunking sound, a cabin under a busy deck, a room too far from everything, or neighbors who seem to believe walls are merely a suggestion. And on a busy Royal Caribbean ship, your cabin should be the place where you can finally shut the door and breathe. After crowds, shows, dining, activities, ports, pool decks, and elevators, you want somewhere calm to come back to. So if the room feels uncomfortable, noisy, badly located, or more dated than expected, it can change the way the whole cruise feels. That does not mean you need the most expensive cabin. Plenty of people are perfectly happy in an inside room, ocean view room, balcony, or older cabin because they knew what they were getting and it suited their budget. The bad part is when people treat the cabin like an afterthought and only realize later how much it affects the trip. So before booking, check the deck plan. Look at what is above and below you. Be careful with connecting cabins if you do not need one. Think about walking distance if mobility or tired legs are an issue. Look carefully at guarantee cabins, obstructed views, older ships, and rooms under busy public areas. Because the wrong cabin may not ruin your cruise, but it can annoy you every single day. And nothing humbles a cruise passenger faster than realizing the most memorable part of their holiday might be the stranger next door coughing through a connecting door at 1 a.m. Number 7. Bingo, slots, and Texas Hold'em can turn excitement into bill shock. Bingo and casino games are one of those Royal Caribbean things that can be harmless fun for some passengers and a very expensive little surprise for others. And the tricky part is that it does not always feel like spending at first. It feels like entertainment. It feels social. It feels exciting. It feels like, we're on a cruise, why not? And that is exactly where people can get caught. Take bingo, for example. Some passengers absolutely love cruise ship bingo. They enjoy the hype, the host, the build-up, the jokes, the prize announcements, and that moment where the whole room suddenly goes quiet because everyone is one number away from acting like they've just won the lottery. And on Royal Caribbean, bingo can feel like a big event. The prizes can sound exciting. The room can be full. The energy builds. People start buying cards, and on some sailings, there may be electronic devices that let passengers play multiple cards at once. That can make it feel like you have a better shot. But here is the bad part. A lot of people may be playing, and only a few people are winning. On the bigger ships, there can be a lot of passengers chasing the same prize. So yes, the prize may sound bigger, but the competition can be bigger too. That is why bingo can become one of those sneaky cruise expenses. Someone might go in thinking, we'll just play once for fun. Then the host makes it exciting. The room is buzzing. The next session sounds even bigger, and before long, they are back again, buying more cards, chasing the big final game, and telling themselves, this could be the one. And maybe it is. But for most people, it is not. Some passengers walk away saying, that was fun. Others look at what they spent over the cruise and realize bingo took a much bigger bite than they expected. And nothing makes a person question their life choices quite like realizing they spent half their onboard budget trying to hear one missing number that never came. The casino can work the same way, but with even more temptation. Royal Caribbean casinos can have slot machines, table games, tournaments, casino rewards, free play, and sometimes Texas Hold'em tournaments, depending on the ship and sailing. And for passengers who enjoy gambling, that can be a fun part of the cruise. The problem is how easy it can feel on board. You're not always handing over cash in the same way you would on land. You may be using your SeaPass card, charging things to your onboard account, or playing in a way that feels a little less real in the moment. That is where people can get carried away. Someone may have been careful all cruise. They skipped the drink package. They avoided specialty dining. They stayed away from the spa. They told themselves, we're doing this cruise on a budget. Then they walk into the casino after dinner. Just for a look, just for 20 minutes, just with a small limit. And suddenly the slot machine starts making noises, the lights are flashing, the bonus round almost hits, and the machine has somehow convinced them it is warming up. Which is funny, because slot machines always seem to be warming up right before they cool down your bank account. Then they move to another machine. Then they go back the next night. Then another night. And by the end of the cruise, they check the onboard account and realize the casino became the most expensive restaurant they never ate in. Now, some passengers really do receive casino offers, cruise certificates, free play, drinks, perks, or future cruise offers through Royal Caribbean's casino program. That is real. But that does not mean gambling is a saving strategy. It only makes sense if you already enjoy gambling, you set a clear budget, and you are completely fine losing that money as entertainment. If you start gambling because you are chasing a cruise certificate or future offer, you need to remember something very important. It is not really free if you paid for it one spin at a time. Texas Hold'em is another one passengers should check before they sail. Some cruisers love the Texas Hold'em tournament side of Royal Caribbean. They like the competition, the social side, and the chance to play something that feels more skill-based than just pressing a button and hoping the machine is in a generous mood. Some tournaments can be exciting, and some passengers have had great experiences with them. But the important thing is this. Do not assume every Royal Caribbean ship or every sailing will have the exact same Texas Hold'em setup you enjoyed before. Casino games, tournaments, rewards, and offers can vary by ship, sailing, and casino rules. One ship might have the tournament or poker experience you were hoping for. Another might not, and that can be disappointing if you were looking forward to it as part of your cruise. That is the bigger lesson with Royal Caribbean gambling and bingo. Check what is actually available on your ship. Set your budget before you start. Treat bingo, slots, and Texas Hold'em as entertainment, not as a plan to make money. And if you win, brilliant, celebrate, tell everyone. Act humble for about 6 seconds and then tell the story again at dinner. But if you do not win, the goal should still be that you only lost what you had already decided was your entertainment money. Because bingo and casinos can be fun. They can also turn into one of those cruise expenses passengers do not fully notice until the final account appears. And later, in the ugly section, we will talk about the harsher side of onboard spending, where people feel trapped by fees, charges, rules, or fine print. But here in the bad section, the warning is simple. On Royal Caribbean, bingo, slots, and Texas Hold'em can be exciting. Just make sure the excitement does not follow you home as bill shock. Number 8. Royal Caribbean sometimes rewards people who already know the system. This is one of the bad things about Royal Caribbean that does not always hit people until they are already on board. The cruise can be great, but it can also feel like some passengers were handed a secret instruction manual while everyone else was told, "Good luck, the buffet is somewhere over there." Experienced Royal Caribbean cruisers often know the little things that make the whole trip easier. They know where to eat when the Windjammer is packed. They know when to check the app. They know which shows or activities need attention early. They know the cruise planner prices can change. They know some extras can be canceled and rebooked if the price drops. They know about free app messaging. They know which included food spots are calmer on certain ships. They know when to avoid elevators, where the quieter corners are, and which cabin locations might cause problems. A first-time Royal Caribbean passenger may not know any of that. And even if they are not new to cruising, they may still be new to how Royal Caribbean does things. They may have sailed Carnival, Norwegian, MSC, Princess, Holland America, or Celebrity before. They may understand cruise cards, dining rooms, buffets, shore excursions, embarkation day, and the general rhythm of cruising. But Royal Caribbean has its own habits, its own app system, its own booking tricks, its own dining quirks, and its own ship-by-ship differences. So even an experienced cruiser can feel like a beginner again when they step onto Royal Caribbean for the first time. That is where the frustration begins. A passenger might go straight to the busiest food spot because that is where everyone else is going. Later, they hear someone say, "Oh, we always go somewhere quieter on embarkation day," and suddenly they realize they spent their first lunch fighting for a table when there may have been an easier option. Someone else might buy a package early and never realize the price dropped before the cruise. Then they hear another passenger say, "We canceled and rebooked ours cheaper," and there goes the mood for at least 3 minutes. Another passenger might spend half the cruise trying to keep track of their family, only to find out later that the app had a free chat feature they could have used. That one hurts. Not dramatically, just enough to make you stare at your phone and think, "Lovely, so we were suffering by choice." And that is the bad side. Royal Caribbean can reward people who already speak the language. The loyal cruisers know the shortcuts, the quiet spots, the booking habits, the food tricks, and the little money-saving moves. New Royal Caribbean passengers may still have a good cruise, but they can waste time, spend more, miss things, or feel more stressed simply because nobody explained the system clearly enough. Now, to be fair, this is also one of the reasons people become loyal to Royal Caribbean. Once you know the tricks, the ships can become much easier and more enjoyable, and we will talk about that properly in the good section. But here in the bad section, the warning is simple. Do not assume Royal Caribbean will explain everything perfectly once you board. Look up your exact ship before you sail. Check the app early. Watch prices before the cruise. Ask questions. Read the schedule. And if you hear experienced cruisers talking about a quiet breakfast spot, a better dining time, a hidden shortcut, or a mistake they never make anymore, pay attention. Because on Royal Caribbean, the difference between a smooth cruise and a frustrating cruise can sometimes be one tiny piece of information you did not know you needed. And later, in the ugly section, we will talk about what happens when that learning curve feels less like a few missing tips and more like passengers are being caught by rules, fees, crowds, or poor communication. But for now, this is the final bad truth. Royal Caribbean can be a lot easier when you know the system. The problem is, first-timers and passengers coming from other cruise lines often learn it the hard way. The ugly. Number 1. When Royal Caribbean does not enforce its own rules. The ugly side of Royal Caribbean starts when passengers feel the rules are there, but nobody is really enforcing them. That is when a normal cruise annoyance turns into something more frustrating. Because most passengers can handle a busy ship. They know there will be families, noise, lines, crowds, excited kids, tired adults, and people walking slowly in the exact spot where everyone else needs to get through. That is cruising. But what annoys people is when they follow the rules and then watch other passengers ignore them with no real consequence. Some passengers say they have seen chairs claimed for hours with nothing but a towel and a pair of sunglasses, while other people walk around looking for somewhere to sit. Others say they have gone to an adult-only space, hoping for a quiet break, only to find it does not feel very adult-only once kids start moving through it. Some complain about smoking drifting into areas where they did not expect it, or busy spaces feeling unmanaged when everyone is trying to move at once. And the awkward part is that most people do not want to complain. They do not want to spend their vacation reporting chair crimes, elevator button chaos, or someone treating a public area like their personal living room. They just want Royal Caribbean to handle it before passengers feel forced to become the cruise police. That is why this belongs in the ugly section. The bad part of a cruise is when something is annoying. The ugly part is when passengers feel the annoying thing is allowed to keep happening. And later in this section, we will get into the specific problems passengers complain about most, like chair hogs, adult-only areas, kids running wild, smoking complaints, closed attractions, refund problems, and final bill shock. To be fair, Royal Caribbean also has crew members who work incredibly hard, and we will talk about that properly in the good section. But here, the warning is simple. Rules only help if passengers believe they matter. And when people feel the rule breakers are winning, even a beautiful ship can start to feel badly managed. Number 2. Chair hogs can turn the pool deck into a silent war zone. Chair hogs are one of those cruise problems that sound small until you are the one walking around the pool deck with nowhere to sit. Then suddenly, it is not small at all. It is personal. Some passengers say this is one of the most annoying parts of sailing on a busy Royal Caribbean ship, especially on sea days when everyone wants sunshine, a pool chair, and the fantasy that they are about to have a peaceful day with a drink in one hand and absolutely no responsibilities in the other. Then, they get to the pool deck and see towels everywhere. Towels on chairs, books on chairs, flip-flops on chairs, a sun hat sitting there like it has paid full fare. And yet, half the actual humans are missing. That is where the frustration starts. Because passengers who follow the rules do not want to claim a chair at 7 a.m. and vanish for 3 hours. They want to turn up, find somewhere to sit, and enjoy the pool deck like normal people who did not come on vacation to investigate abandoned towel behavior. But when too many people save loungers and disappear, the whole pool area starts feeling unfair. You walk past a row of empty chairs with belongings on them, then look at the people standing around with bags, drinks, sunscreen, and that confused expression that says, "Are these chairs taken, or are we being emotionally bullied by beach towels?" And the worst part is that nobody wants to touch someone else's stuff. Nobody wants to be the person who moves a towel and then has a stranger return 40 minutes later acting like you stole their inheritance. So, people hover, they circle, they wait, they pretend they are just looking around casually when really they are doing pool deck surveillance. And on Royal Caribbean's bigger ships, like Icon, Wonder, Utopia, Symphony, Harmony, Oasis, and Allure, the pool areas can be a major part of the experience. People book these ships partly because the outdoor decks look so fun. So when the chairs are taken by invisible passengers, it feels even more annoying. Now, to be fair, not every saved chair is a crime scene. Sometimes someone has gone to the bathroom, grabbed a drink, or taken a quick dip. That is normal. The problem is when chairs sit empty for ages while other passengers cannot find anywhere to sit. That is when chair saving stops feeling harmless and starts feeling selfish. And this is why chair hogs belong in the ugly section. It is not just about a lounger, it is about passengers feeling like the people who break the rules get the best spots, while everyone else is left wandering around pretending they enjoy standing near the pool. Later in the good section, we will talk about why Royal Caribbean's pool decks and outdoor spaces can be fantastic when they work properly. But here, this is the ugly truth. A beautiful pool deck can turn sour very quickly when the most powerful passenger on board appears to be a towel with sunglasses. Number 3. Adult-only areas do not always feel adult-only. Adult-only areas are one of those things that sound wonderful when you are booking a cruise. You imagine a calmer space, a quieter pool or lounge area, a place where adults can relax, read, have a drink, sit in the sun, and enjoy a break from the louder parts of the ship. And on Royal Caribbean, spaces like the solarium can be a huge selling point, especially for adults traveling without kids, couples wanting a calmer cruise, or parents who love their children deeply but would still like 20 minutes where nobody asks where their goggles are. When the adult-only space works, it can be brilliant. But when it does not feel adult-only, passengers notice very quickly. Some passengers say they have gone to these areas expecting peace, only to find kids walking through, hanging around, splashing, or treating the space like it is just another part of the family pool deck. And that is when people get frustrated. Not because they hate children. That is not the point. Royal Caribbean is a family-friendly cruise line, and everyone knows kids are part of the experience. Families are one of the reasons the ships have so much energy. But if an area is promoted as adult-only, adults expect it to feel different from the rest of the ship. They want one place where the volume drops. One place where nobody is cannonballing into the mood. One place where the atmosphere does not feel like a birthday party has escaped from the kids' club. That is especially important on the larger Royal Caribbean ships, because so many areas are designed for families, kids, teens, and big group fun. So, when adults finally find the space that is meant for them, and it still does not feel protected, it can feel like there is nowhere to escape. And the awkward thing is that most passengers do not want to complain about kids. Nobody wants to become the villain of the cruise by saying, "Excuse me, this child is ruining my cucumber water atmosphere." But they also paid for the cruise. They saw the adult-only area advertised. They expected Royal Caribbean to manage it, and if nobody steps in, the frustration builds. That is why this fits the ugly section. It is not just that kids exist on a family cruise line. Of course they do. It is that adults can feel like the one space meant to be calmer is not being protected properly. Later in the good section, we will talk about how Royal Caribbean can be brilliant for families and multi-generational groups, because that is one of its biggest strengths. But here, the ugly truth is simple. If an area is called adult-only, passengers expect it to feel adult-only. Otherwise, it just becomes another busy ship space with nicer chairs. Number 4. Kids running wild can make the ship feel chaotic. Royal Caribbean is one of the most family-friendly cruise lines out there. That is part of its appeal. Families love the big ships because there is so much for kids and teens to do. There are slides, pools, arcades, sports courts, activities, shows, kids clubs, teen spaces, private island fun, and enough excitement to make a child think sleep is a personal attack. And for many families, that is exactly why they book Royal Caribbean. But the ugly side shows up when family-friendly starts feeling like anything goes. Some passengers say they have seen kids running through hallways, pressing every elevator button, shouting in lounges, racing through public areas, splashing in hot tubs, or treating the ship like one giant playground with restaurants attached. And yes, kids are excited. They are on vacation too. But passengers get frustrated when it feels like nobody is guiding them, nobody is watching them, and everyone else is just expected to smile politely while a small person turns the elevator panel into a piano. That is where the problem becomes less about kids and more about supervision. Most passengers understand that children will be louder than adults. They know families are a big part of Royal Caribbean. They are not expecting the ship to feel like a library where everyone whispers near the soft serve machine. But there is a difference between kids having fun and kids taking over shared spaces. A child laughing at the pool is normal. A group of kids racing through a dining area while someone is carrying hot coffee is not quite as charming. Teenagers hanging out together is normal. Teenagers blocking stairs, shouting in hallways, or acting like the ship is their private mall can wear people down quickly. And when adults do not step in, Other passengers start feeling like they are trapped in someone else's parenting experiment at sea. This is why timing also matters. School holidays, summer sailings, spring break, short cruises, and the newest family-focused ships can have a very different atmosphere from a longer, quieter sailing on an older ship. A passenger looking for calm may have a very different experience depending on when and what they book. Later in the good section, we will talk about why Royal Caribbean can be amazing for families, because when the kids' activities, entertainment, and family spaces work well, they really can create brilliant vacations. But here in the ugly section, the warning is this: Royal Caribbean is family-friendly, not chaos-friendly. And when kids are allowed to run wild, the ship can start feeling less like a floating resort and more like someone turned a school field trip loose on the high seas. Number 5. Smoking areas can ruin spaces passengers thought they could enjoy. Smoking is one of those cruise topics where passengers can have very strong feelings very quickly. And on Royal Caribbean, the problem is not always that smoking is allowed somewhere. Most passengers understand that cruise lines set aside certain areas for smokers, and people who smoke are also passengers who paid for their vacation. The ugly part is when smoke drifts into places where other passengers did not expect to deal with it. Some passengers say they have walked near the casino, certain outdoor decks, or nearby public areas and suddenly smelled smoke before they even saw where it was coming from. And if you are sensitive to smoke, have asthma, get headaches, or simply cannot stand the smell, that can change how you use part of the ship. It is especially frustrating when the smoky area is near somewhere passengers need to pass through or near a place they otherwise would have enjoyed. You might be dressed up after dinner, heading somewhere for a drink or a show, feeling very cruise elegant for about 12 seconds, and then suddenly the smoke hits you and ruins the mood faster than realizing your cabin is on the other end of the ship. Some passengers say they avoid the casino completely because of it, even if they would have liked to play. Others say they avoid certain outdoor areas because the smoke carries, especially when the ship is busy or the wind is not helping anyone. And that is where it becomes ugly, because passengers are not just saying, "I do not like smoking." They are saying, "Why is this affecting areas I thought I could use?" Now, to be fair, Royal Caribbean has rules about where smoking is allowed, and smokers need somewhere permitted to go. This is not about pretending everyone has the same preference. But for non-smokers, the location of those areas can make a huge difference. A smoking section tucked away properly is one thing. A smoking area that affects nearby spaces, walkways, casino areas, or outdoor seating can make passengers feel like they are losing part of the ship. And on a cruise, space matters. People want to find their favorite bar, their favorite quiet deck, their favorite place to sit after dinner, or their favorite little walking route around the ship. If one of those areas smells like smoke every time they pass through, they remember it. Later in the good section, we will talk about the parts of Royal Caribbean ships that passengers do love, because many ships have beautiful public spaces, ocean views, lounges, and outdoor areas that can be fantastic when the atmosphere is right. But here in the ugly section, the warning is simple. If smoke bothers you, check the smoking areas on your exact ship before you sail. Because nothing ruins a peaceful ocean moment quite like finding the perfect spot, sitting down, taking a deep breath, and immediately regretting the breathing. Number 6. Closed attractions can make passengers feel misled. This one can make passengers furious because Royal Caribbean's biggest ships are often sold on the wow factor. People do not just book Icon of the Seas, Star of the Seas, Wonder of the Seas, Utopia of the Seas, Symphony, Harmony, Oasis, or Allure because they need a bed and a buffet. They book them because of the features. The slides, pools, shows, rides, restaurants, kids areas, aqua theater, flow rider, water park style attractions, and all the things that make the ship feel more like a floating resort than a normal cruise ship. So when a major feature is closed, broken, under maintenance, or unavailable, passengers do not always see it as a small inconvenience. They see it as part of what they paid for. Some passengers say they picked a specific Royal Caribbean ship because of one feature their kids were excited about. Maybe it was the water slides. Maybe it was a surf simulator. Maybe it was a show, a sports activity, a kids area, or a private island attraction connected to the sailing. Then they board and find out the thing they were looking forward to is closed, fully booked, canceled, or not operating the way they expected. That can sting. Because by that point, it is not easy to change plans. You are already on board. Your flights are done. Your bags are unpacked. Your child has already told 17 people they are going on the water slides. And now you are standing there trying to explain that the main attraction they saw in every video is not happening, while also pretending you are not annoyed yourself. That is where the ugly feeling comes from. It is not just that something is closed. Things break. Weather happens. Safety matters. Maintenance is real. Nobody wants Royal Caribbean running an attraction that should not be running just because passengers are grumpy. The problem is communication. If passengers know ahead of time, they can adjust their expectations. They may still be disappointed, but at least they are not finding out after they have already chosen that ship, paid the higher fare, and built the whole vacation around it. Some passengers are understanding when a feature closes unexpectedly. Others get angry when they feel the cruise line knew, or should have warned them earlier, especially if that feature was a big reason they booked. And this does not only apply to the newest ships. On older ships, passengers can be frustrated when venues are closed, certain activities are missing, shows are changed, hot tubs are unavailable, or areas are blocked off for maintenance. On smaller ships, one closed venue can feel bigger because there are fewer alternatives. That is why this belongs in the ugly section. Royal Caribbean's biggest strength is often the ship itself, and we will talk about that in the good section because the attractions can be genuinely amazing when they are open and working. But when the ship is the destination, closed features hit harder. It is one thing to miss a small activity. It is another thing to pay for the WOW ship and then find out part of the WOW has a sign on it saying, "It is closed." And nothing tests a parent's patience quite like standing beside a closed attraction while a child looks at them as if they personally sabotaged the entire cruise. Now the next few ugly truths are where things can really start to hurt, because this is where Royal Caribbean frustrations move closer to people's money. This is the part where passengers can feel trapped by rules, shocked by charges, stuck waiting for help, or left wondering why something that sounded simple became so hard to fix. And when a cruise problem starts affecting your wallet, it stops feeling like a small annoyance and starts feeling personal. Number 7. Refunds, changes, and non-refundable deposits can feel brutally unforgiving. This is one of the ugly parts of cruising that people often do not think about until something goes wrong. When you book a Royal Caribbean cruise, the rules around deposits, cancellations, changes, refunds, and fare types can matter a lot. But when everything is going well, most passengers do not want to think about that. They are thinking about the ship, the ports, the cabin, the countdown, and whether they have bought enough clothes for a trip where they will still somehow say, "I have nothing to wear." Then life happens. Someone gets sick. A baby arrives. Work changes. Flights become a problem. A family situation comes up. A passenger realizes the dates no longer work. Or they simply need to move the cruise. That is when the fine print suddenly becomes very real. Some passengers say they thought changing a cruise would be simple, only to find out the fare they booked had restrictions, fees, penalties, or a non-refundable deposit attached. And that can feel harsh. Because from the passenger's side, it may not feel like they are trying to get away with anything. They may still want to cruise. They may still want to spend the money with Royal Caribbean. They may just need a different date, a different ship, or a different sailing. But the booking rules may not care about the emotional backstory. The rules are the rules, and that is where the frustration starts. Someone might have booked the cheaper fare because it looked like the better deal at the time. Then later, when plans change, they realize the cheaper fare came with less flexibility. That cheaper option suddenly does not feel so cheap anymore. It feels like the cruise line handed them a discount with a trap door under it. Now, to be fair, Royal Caribbean does disclose fare rules, cancellation policies, deposits, and refund conditions. This is not usually hidden in a secret cave guarded by a man with a clipboard. But a lot of passengers do not fully understand what those rules mean until they need to use them. And by then, it can be too late. That is why this belongs in the ugly section. It is not just an annoying fee or a little onboard charge. It can be hundreds or even thousands of dollars affected by one decision made months earlier. The lesson is boring but important. Know what kind of fare you're booking. Check whether your deposit is refundable. Understand the change rules. Look at travel insurance. Think carefully before choosing the cheapest option if your plans are not locked in. And if you are booking through a travel agent, make sure they explain the rules clearly before you hand over money. Later in the good section, we will talk about why planning carefully with Royal Caribbean can really pay off, especially when you understand the system before you book. But here in the ugly section, this is the warning. A Royal Caribbean deal can look great when life is going perfectly. The real test is what happens when life changes. And that is when some passengers discover the most expensive part of their cruise is the one they never even got to take. Number 8. Guest services can become a frustration when problems get passed around. Guest services is supposed to be the place where problems get solved. That is the idea. Something goes wrong, you go to the desk, explain what happened, and hopefully someone helps fix it before it ruins your cruise. And sometimes that does happen. Plenty of passengers have had great crew members who listened, helped, followed up, and made a bad situation better. We will talk more about the good side of Royal Caribbean service later, because when the crew are helpful, they can genuinely save the whole mood of a trip. But here in the ugly section, we are talking about the times when passengers feel like they are being passed around instead of helped. Some passengers say they have gone to guest services with what seemed like a simple issue, only to be told to speak to someone else. Then that person sends them somewhere else. Then the next person says it has to be handled by another department, and suddenly the passenger is not on a relaxing cruise anymore. They are on a floating customer service obstacle course. Maybe it is a billing question. Maybe it is a reservation problem. Maybe it is an app issue. Maybe something in the cabin has not been fixed. Maybe an excursion, dining time, package, or onboard charge needs attention. The actual issue can be different, but the feeling is the same. Why is this now my job to chase? That is what makes it ugly, because passengers are already on vacation. They do not want to spend sea days standing in line at guest services, repeating the same story, showing the same screenshot, and trying not to become the person behind them's onboard entertainment. And the longer it goes on, the more frustrating it feels. A small problem on day 1 can become a bigger problem by day 3 if nobody takes ownership of it. A wrong charge feels more annoying when you have already asked about it twice. A cabin issue feels worse when you keep hearing, someone will come by, and nobody does. And an app or reservation problem becomes more stressful when the clock is ticking and the thing you wanted is happening soon. This is where passengers can start feeling trapped. On land, if a hotel or restaurant does not help, you may have more options. On a ship, you are still there tomorrow. The desk is still there tomorrow. The problem is still there tomorrow, and so is the line. Now, to be fair, guest services staff often deal with exhausted, confused, angry, and sometimes completely unreasonable passengers. They are not magicians with name tags. They cannot fix every policy, weather delay, sold-out show, or decision made before the cruise. But when passengers feel like nobody is taking responsibility, it can change how they see the whole cruise line. Because at that point, the issue is no longer just the original problem. It is the feeling that getting help has become harder than the problem itself. So the warning is simple. If something is wrong, report it early, keep screenshots, write down names or times if needed, and check your onboard account before the final night. Do not wait until the end of the cruise, when everyone else has suddenly remembered they also have problems. Because guest services can be helpful. But when a problem gets passed around too long, a small issue can turn into the part of the cruise passengers remember most. Number 9. The app and reservation system can make people miss things they paid to enjoy. This is the uglier side of the app and reservation problem. Back in the bad section, we talked about how Royal Caribbean can sometimes feel like a cruise you have to manage through the app. But here in the ugly section, it goes one step further. This is when passengers feel like the system has actually made them miss out on something they thought was part of the cruise. And that is a very different feeling. It is one thing to say, oh, I should have planned better. It is another thing to say, hang on, I paid to be on this ship, I saw this entertainment advertised, and now I cannot get into it. That is where passengers get annoyed. Some people book Royal Caribbean because of the entertainment. They want the Aqua Theater show, the ice show, the big theater production, the comedy, the live music, or the special activities that make Royal Caribbean feel different from a quieter cruise line. Then they get on board and discover the best times are gone, the show is full, standby is stressful, or the venue is simply too small for the number of passengers who want to go. And yes, sometimes there are ways around it. You can check earlier, you can use standby, you can try another time, you can ask crew members, you can be flexible. But that does not always help the passenger who already feels disappointed. Imagine getting dressed after dinner, heading toward the show, and realizing you are now in a standby line with dozens of other hopeful people, all wearing the same expression, polite on the outside, deeply irritated on the inside. You're not angry enough to cause a scene, but you are absolutely annoyed enough to whisper, "This better be worth it." That is not the relaxing entertainment experience people pictured, and it does not only apply to shows. It can be dining times, activities, popular onboard events, classes, comedy shows, specialty venues, or anything that books out faster than passengers expected. For families, it can be even more frustrating. If the kids were excited about something and it is full, closed, or impossible to book at a useful time, the parent becomes the person trying to explain cruise logistics to a disappointed child. And nobody wants to spend their vacation saying, "Sorry, the app says no." Now, to be fair, Royal Caribbean has a hard job here. The ships are huge, but venues are still limited. Not every passenger can fit into every show at the same time, and reservations are one way to manage that. And when the system works, Royal Caribbean entertainment can be fantastic. We will talk about that properly in the good section, because the shows are one of the biggest reasons people love the line. But here in the ugly section, the frustration is this. If a cruise line sells the ship partly on amazing entertainment and exciting onboard experiences, passengers expect a fair chance to enjoy them. When they cannot, it starts to feel like the best parts of the ship are technically included, but not always easy to access. So the warning is clear. Check reservations as early as you can. Look at the app before the cruise and as soon as you board. Do not assume you can casually walk into every popular event at the last minute. And if something matters to you, treat it like part of the trip, not something you will figure out later. Because on Royal Caribbean, missing a show is annoying. But missing something you specifically booked the ship for can feel ugly. Number 10. The final bill can turn small annoyances into real anger. This is the part of the cruise where everything suddenly becomes very real. For most of the sailing, spending on board can feel strangely painless. You are not pulling out cash every time. You're not always seeing the money leave your bank account in the moment. You're tapping a card, signing a receipt, charging something to the room, or telling yourself, "We will check it later." And then later arrives. Usually near the end of the cruise, when you're already tired, sunburned, slightly overfed, and trying to work out how one suitcase seems to have become 3. That is when passengers check the onboard account and suddenly the little charges do not look so little anymore. A drink here, a coffee there, a service charge, a photo, a bingo session, a casino charge, an arcade charge, a specialty dinner, a shore excursion, an internet package, a shop purchase, a charge that might be correct, but you do not remember it because cruise brain is real and apparently very expensive. This is where the mood can change quickly. Something that felt harmless on day 2 can feel very different when it is sitting on the final bill with all its little friends. And for some passengers, the anger is not only about how much they spent, it is about surprises. Maybe they did not realize service charges were added. Maybe they thought something was included. Maybe a family member charged something without telling them. Maybe the kids discovered the arcade. Maybe the casino spending was easier than expected. Maybe a package, dining charge, or room purchase looks different from what they thought they agreed to. Or maybe there is an actual mistake, and now they have to deal with it at the worst possible time, when everyone else has also decided to check their bill. That is when the guest services line becomes its own little farewell event. People are standing there with phones, receipts, confused faces, and the energy of passengers who were emotionally ready to leave the ship until the bill personally attacked them. This is why final bill shock belongs in the ugly section. Because money changes the way people remember a cruise. A crowded buffet is annoying. A missed chair is annoying. A smoky area is annoying. But a bill that is much higher than expected can make the whole holiday feel different. Suddenly passengers start replaying the cruise in their head. Did we really need that photo package? How many drinks did we buy? Who went to the arcade again? Was that charge supposed to be included? Why does this coffee feel like it now has emotional consequences? And the worst time to discover a problem is the last night or debarkation morning, when everyone is packing, rushing, tired, and trying to leave. So the smartest move is to check the onboard account throughout the cruise. Not obsessively. You do not need to turn into the ship accountant with sunscreen. But check it every day or two. Look for mistakes early. Question anything confusing while there is still time. Set limits for kids or family members if needed. Keep an eye on casino, arcade, bar, dining, and shop spending. Because once the final bill arrives, all the tiny cruise decisions gather together and introduce themselves as one large number. Now, to be fair, Royal Caribbean can still be good value if passengers understand what is included, budget carefully, and choose extras wisely. We will talk more about the smart side of cruising Royal Caribbean in the good section. But here in the ugly section, this is the warning. Do not wait until the end to find out what your cruise really cost. Because nothing ends a holiday faster than a final bill that makes you sit upright and say, "I'm sorry, we spent what?" Now, it is time for the good. Because after all the bad and ugly parts, this is where Royal Caribbean reminds people why they booked in the first place. And if you have ever wondered how passengers can complain about a cruise and still book another one, this next section is exactly why. The good. Number 1. Royal Caribbean's biggest ships can genuinely feel like nothing else at sea. This is where Royal Caribbean really knows how to show off. Ships like Icon of the Seas, Star of the Seas, Wonder of the Seas, Utopia of the Seas, Symphony of the Seas, Harmony of the Seas, Oasis of the Seas, and Allure of the Seas are not just normal cruise ships. They feel like floating resorts. For some passengers, that first walk on board is the moment they finally understand the hype. They step into the Royal Promenade, walk through Central Park on an Oasis-class ship, see the huge pool decks, slides, cafes, bars, shops, family spaces, and activity areas, and suddenly the reaction is, "Wait, how is all of this on a ship?" That is the good side of Royal Caribbean's biggest ships. The ship itself can become the destination. You're not just sailing to different ports. You're exploring a place that happens to move. One minute you are walking past cafes and shops. Then you turn a corner and find a quieter space with a completely different mood. Then you go up a few decks and there are pools, music, slides, ocean views, and passengers looking around like they have accidentally booked a small city at sea. And that is what Royal Caribbean does so well. The biggest ships have that "what else is around the corner" feeling. Some passengers say they expected a cruise ship, but it felt more like a resort, a water park, a hotel, and an entertainment complex all rolled together. And yes, that can be too much for some people. We already talked about that in the bad section. But for the right passenger, this is the magic. Families love it. First-time cruisers love it. People who want energy, choice, and that big holiday feeling often love it. Even passengers who prefer smaller ships can still look around and admit, "Okay, this is impressive." You may not want the crowds. You may not want all the walking. You may not want a ship so large that forgetting your sunglasses in the cabin feels like a fitness challenge. But you can still see why people get excited. When Royal Caribbean's biggest ships work, they really can feel like nothing else at sea. And that is why so many passengers get off one of these ships already wondering which big Royal Caribbean ship they should try next. Number 2. The entertainment can deliver the Royal Caribbean wow factor. Royal Caribbean entertainment is one of the biggest reasons people forgive some of the annoying parts. Because when the shows are good, they can be really good. Some passengers go in expecting normal cruise ship entertainment, maybe a singer, a comedian, a few dancers, and someone wearing sparkles with confidence. Then they see an aqua theater show, an ice show, a big theater production, live music, comedy, or one of those full-scale performances where you suddenly remember you were watching this on a moving ship in the middle of the ocean. That is when Royal Caribbean can feel special. People walk out saying, "How did they even do that on a ship?" And that is the reaction Royal Caribbean is very good at creating. The aqua theater shows on the bigger ships can feel huge, with diving, music, lights, water, movement, and enough going on that you almost forget you were annoyed about the elevator 10 minutes earlier. The ice shows are another one. A lot of first-time passengers hear ice skating show on a cruise ship and think, "Sorry, what?" Then they see it and realize Royal Caribbean did not just squeeze a tiny novelty rink on board for fun. They actually built a whole experience around it. And the theater shows can be impressive too, especially on the ships with larger productions. Some passengers say the entertainment was the highlight of the cruise, and you can understand why. After dinner, instead of just wandering around wondering what to do next, you can end up watching something that feels more polished than people expected at sea. Now, not every show will be everyone's favorite. Some passengers love the big productions, some prefer comedy, some just want live music and a drink. And some people sit through a show with the facial expression of someone who was dragged there by their family and is trying to be supportive. That is fine. But the good thing is that Royal Caribbean usually gives passengers a lot more entertainment variety than many people expect. And when it works, it adds real value to the cruise. It gives the night a proper finish. It gives families something to do together. It gives couples a reason to get dressed up. It gives first-time cruisers that, "This is bigger than I thought" feeling. And it gives loyal Royal Caribbean fans one of the strongest reasons to come back. We already talked in the bad and the ugly sections about reservations, crowds, and the frustration of not always getting into what you want. But here in the good section, we have to say the other side. There is a reason people care so much about getting into those shows. Because when Royal Caribbean entertainment lands, it can be one of the best parts of the whole cruise. And sometimes one brilliant show is enough to make passengers forget, at least for a little while, that earlier they were ready to have a serious emotional conversation with a towel on a pool chair. Number 3. Families can have the kind of holiday kids talk about for years. This is one of Royal Caribbean's biggest strengths. For families, these ships can be absolute magic, not calm magic. More like, how did my kids make friends before I even found the cabin? Kind of magic. Royal Caribbean does not just give families a pool and hope for the best. On many ships, the kids' programming is a huge part of the experience. Adventure Ocean is Royal Caribbean's main kids program, and depending on the ship, kids may be separated into age groups with games, crafts, themed activities, science-style experiments, competitions, sports, and group challenges. And teens can have their own spaces too, with names that vary by ship, like Social 100, Social 020, the Living Room, or Fuel. These are places where older kids can hang out, meet people their own age, play games, listen to music, watch movies, and so much more. That is a big deal, because when kids feel like the ship has something for them, the whole family cruise changes. Parents are not dragging children around all day trying to keep them entertained. The kids have activities, friends, staff members, and their own little cruise world to talk about. And for parents, that can feel like freedom. Sometimes the real luxury is not champagne, marble bathrooms, or a fancy dinner. Sometimes the real luxury is 2 peaceful hours where your kids are happily entertained, supervised, and not asking for snacks every 7 minutes. Some parents say this is exactly why they keep coming back to Royal Caribbean. Their kids are excited to go to the club, their teens have somewhere to hang out, and the adults might actually get a quiet meal, a drink, a show, or a moment where nobody calls out, "Mom, where are my goggles?" Now, yes, we talked in the ugly section about what happens when kids are not supervised properly, or family energy spills into spaces where passengers wanted calm. But here in the good section, Royal Caribbean gets the family experience right. It can be fantastic. Kids remember the clubs, the slides, the shows, the friends they made, and being allowed to get pizza at strange times. And parents remember that, for once, the ship helped entertain the kids instead of the entire job falling on them. So yes, Royal Caribbean can be busy, loud, and full of families. But for families who want activities, kids' clubs, teen spaces, and a cruise that gives children their own holiday too, that is not a flaw. That is the reason they booked it. Number 4. The smaller ships can be exactly what the right passenger is looking for. After talking about Royal Caribbean's biggest ships, this is important, because not everyone wants the biggest ship. Not everyone wants the loudest pool deck, the longest walk back to the cabin, or a ship so full of features that you need a meeting just to decide what to do after lunch. Some passengers are much happier on Royal Caribbean's smaller or older ships. Ships like Grandeur of the Seas, Vision of the Seas, Rhapsody of the Seas, Jewel of the Seas, Brilliance of the Seas, Serenade of the Seas, Enchantment of the Seas, and other more traditional Royal Caribbean ships can offer a completely different kind of cruise. And for the right person, that can be a very good thing. Some passengers say they love these ships because they feel calmer, easier to navigate, and more connected to the ocean. You can find your way around faster. You're not walking for what feels like 3 business days to get back to your cabin. You can settle into a favorite bar, a favorite deck, or a favorite quiet spot without feeling like the ship is constantly trying to entertain you with a marching band and a water slide. That slower feeling can be exactly what some cruisers want. They are not booking Royal Caribbean for the biggest attractions. They are booking for the ports, the crew, the sea views, the price, the atmosphere, or the simple feeling of being on a cruise. And that matters, because some of the smaller ships can visit places the biggest ships cannot. They can feel more traditional, more relaxed, and sometimes more personal. For passengers who do not want the full floating resort experience, that can be a huge positive. Now, These ships are not for everyone. If you book one expecting Icon, Wonder, Utopia, Symphony, or Harmony Energy, you may be disappointed. We already talked about that in the bad section. But if you know what you are booking, the smaller ships can be lovely. They can suit couples who want a calmer trip. They can suit older cruisers who do not want endless walking. They can suit people who care more about itinerary than slides. They can suit passengers who want Royal Caribbean without feeling like they accidentally booked a theme park at sea. And some loyal cruisers will defend these ships strongly. They know the cabins may not feel as flashy. They know there may be fewer restaurants and fewer giant attractions. But they also know the ship feels manageable, familiar, and easier to enjoy. And honestly, there is something nice about a ship where you can find the dining room without needing a map, a compass, and someone from guest services to send a search party. That is the good side of Royal Caribbean's variety. The biggest ships get the headlines. But the smaller ships have their fans for a reason. For the right passenger, they are not the weaker version of Royal Caribbean. They are the better fit. Number 5. The crew can turn a good cruise into a great one. This is one of the most important good things about Royal Caribbean. Because ships are impressive, shows are exciting, food matters, cabins matter. But sometimes the thing passengers remember most is a crew member who made the cruise feel personal. It might be a cabin steward who learns your routine and somehow appears at exactly the right time every day. It might be a waiter who remembers your drink, your dessert, or that your child wanted the same bread roll every night like it was part of the official itinerary. It might be a bartender who remembers your name by day 2, which is either excellent service or a gentle sign that you have been visiting that bar with real commitment. It might be a kids club staff member who helps a nervous child settle in. Or it might be an activities host who turns trivia, karaoke, dance classes, or silly pool games into one of the funniest parts of the trip. That is where Royal Caribbean can really shine. Some passengers say the crew were the reason they came home happy, even when other parts of the cruise were not perfect. Maybe the ship was crowded. Maybe the food was hit or miss. Maybe the cabin was not ideal. But one crew member listened, helped, remembered something, fixed something, or simply made them feel looked after. And that can change the whole mood of a cruise. Because on a ship, you may see the same people every day. The waiter at dinner, the cabin steward in the hallway, the bartender at your favorite bar. The activities host who somehow has more energy than should be legally allowed before noon. So when those crew members are warm, funny, helpful, and good at their job, they become part of the holiday. That is why passengers remember them by name. Not because everything was perfect, but because someone made the cruise feel better. Now, not every service experience is perfect. We already talked in the ugly section about what happens when problems get passed around or passengers feel they are not being helped properly. But when Royal Caribbean service is good, it can be very good. It can take a busy ship and make it feel more personal. And sometimes, the best part of Royal Caribbean is not the biggest slide, the flashiest show, or the newest ship. Sometimes, it is the crew member who remembers your name and makes you feel like you are not just another sea pass card walking around in sandals. Number 6. Groups can split up, do their own thing, and still have the same holiday together. This is one of the best things about Royal Caribbean, especially for families, couples, friends, and big groups. Nobody has to want the exact same holiday. And honestly, that can save everyone. Because on some vacations, the whole group ends up being dragged through one person's idea of fun while everyone else quietly loses the will to live. But on the right Royal Caribbean ship, people can spread out without the holiday falling apart. One person might head to the pool, someone else might try trivia, the kids might go to Adventure Ocean, a teen might disappear into their own space, someone might find live music, someone might go to the casino, and someone else might proudly do absolutely nothing. And doing nothing is still a valid vacation activity. In fact, it deserves more respect. That is where Royal Caribbean works really well. The ships give people room to split up without feeling like the whole group has fallen apart. You can do different things during the day, then come back together for dinner, a show, a drink, or that classic cruise conversation where everyone reports what they did, like, it is a family news bulletin. One person says, "We went to the pool." Someone else says, "We did trivia." The kids say, "We made friends." Someone says, "I found the pizza." And one person says, "I got lost twice, but I'm calling that exploring." That kind of variety is a huge strength. It means the cruise does not have to be one person's idea of fun forced onto everyone else. And for big families or multi-generational groups, that matters a lot. Grandparents might want a slower pace. Parents might want the kids entertained. Teens might want space. Younger kids want action. Adults without kids may want a drink and some peace. And somehow, on the right Royal Caribbean ship, those different holidays can happen inside the same holiday. That is why people come back. Because when it works, Royal Caribbean lets everyone have their own version of a good day, without the whole group needing to march around together like a confused tour bus. Number 7. Royal Caribbean gives you choices, and that can be brilliant when you know what you want. We talked earlier about the extras, and yes, Royal Caribbean can absolutely tempt passengers into spending more than they planned. But there is another side to that. For some cruisers, the choices are actually one of the best parts. Not everyone wants the same cruise. Some passengers are happy with the included food, included shows, pools, activities, ocean views, and whatever snacks they can find without signing another receipt. Others want to upgrade a few parts of the trip. Maybe they want one specialty dinner because it is a birthday, anniversary, or just one of those, we survived the last few months and deserve dessert moments. Maybe they want Wi-Fi because switching off completely sounds relaxing until they remember work, family, or teenagers exist. Maybe they want a drink package because they do not want to do mental math every time someone orders a cocktail, coffee, soda, or bottle of water. And that is where Royal Caribbean's choice system can work well. You do not have to cruise the same way as the person in the next cabin. A budget cruiser can keep things simple and still have a great time. A family can spend money on the things that actually help their trip. A couple can skip the extras they do not care about and splurge on one thing that makes the cruise feel special. That flexibility is useful. The trick is knowing what matters to you before the ship starts tempting you with every upgraded version of your own vacation. Because if you say yes to everything, Royal Caribbean can get expensive fast. But if you choose carefully, the extras can become tools instead of traps. You can spend where it improves the cruise and skip what would only drain the budget. That is the good side. Royal Caribbean gives passengers a lot of ways to shape their holiday. You can go simple. You can go upgraded. You can mix both. And when you know what you actually value, those choices can make the cruise feel more personal, not just more expensive. Number 8. The app and insider tricks can actually make the cruise easier once you know the system. This is the positive side of the secret instruction manual problem. Earlier, we talked about how Royal Caribbean can feel confusing when you do not know the system. But once you do know it, the whole cruise can feel much easier. And that is why experienced Royal Caribbean cruisers sometimes seem suspiciously calm. They are not smarter. They are not psychic. They just know where to look. They check the app early. They keep an eye on the daily schedule. They watch the cruise planner before the cruise. They know some pre-cruise purchases can change price, so they pay attention before sailing instead of finding out later and quietly taking it personally. They also know the small things that make a big difference. They know to check their onboard account before the last night. They know which activities need booking early. They know where the quieter food spots may be on their exact ship. They know the app can help with schedules, dining, activities, spending, and sometimes guest chat while connected to the ship's Wi-Fi. That does not sound exciting until you are actually on board. Then suddenly, knowing one little thing can save your whole mood. You avoid the packed lunch rush. You find an activity you would have missed. You spot a charge before the final morning. You book something before it fills. You message your family instead of wandering around the ship like you are in a low-budget detective show trying to locate your own children. Some passengers say their second Royal Caribbean cruise felt much smoother than their first, not because the ship changed, but because they finally knew how Royal Caribbean worked. That is the good side. Royal Caribbean can take a little learning, but once you understand the system, the cruise can feel calmer, cheaper, easier, and much more enjoyable. The first time, you might feel like everyone else has a head start. The next time, you're the person quietly avoiding the chaos while someone else walks into it holding a buffet plate and pure optimism. And honestly, that little bit of experience can be worth a lot. Number 9. Loyalty perks and status matching can make Royal Caribbean more rewarding over time. Royal Caribbean is one of those cruise lines where repeat passengers can start feeling like the system slowly opens up for them. Not all at once. Nobody takes one cruise and suddenly gets treated like the captain's long-lost cousin. But over time, The Crown and Anchor Society can make sailing with Royal Caribbean feel more rewarding. Passengers can earn points, move through loyalty tiers, and unlock perks that may include things like discounts, onboard offers, priority style benefits, events, balcony discounts at higher levels, and other extras depending on status and sailing. And for loyal cruisers, those little benefits can start to matter. A discount here, a drink voucher there, a better offer, a special event, a perk that makes them feel like their repeat business actually counts. It may not sound dramatic to someone taking their first cruise, but to someone who cruises often, these perks can become part of the reason they stick with Royal Caribbean. And now, Royal Caribbean's wider family of brands makes that even more interesting. Royal Caribbean, Celebrity Cruises, and Silversea have loyalty status matching across the group, so passengers who have status with one brand may be able to receive matched recognition with another. That can make it easier for loyal guests to try a different style of cruise without feeling like they are starting from zero. That is a smart move, because someone who loves Royal Caribbean might eventually want to try Celebrity for a more adult, premium feel. Or someone who has sailed Celebrity might look at Royal Caribbean for a family trip and still feel like their loyalty history has not vanished into the ocean. Now, loyalty perks are not a reason to book a cruise you do not actually want. Nobody should choose the wrong ship just because a discount winked at them. But if you already enjoy Royal Caribbean, the loyalty program can make coming back feel more worthwhile. And that is one of the good things Royal Caribbean does well. It gives repeat passengers a reason to feel invested. And for some cruisers, that is when Royal Caribbean starts feeling less like a one-off holiday and more like a cruise line they actually know how to work in their favor. And for some cruisers, that is how Royal Caribbean goes from, "We tried it once," to, "We're already looking at the next one." Number 10. When Royal Caribbean gets the ship, timing, and passenger right, people understand the hype. This is the real reason Royal Caribbean has so many loyal fans. Because when it works, it really works. The right ship, the right itinerary, the right time of year, and the right expectations can turn Royal Caribbean into a cruise people talk about for years. That is why this video needed the good section. Because after all the bad and ugly parts, it would be easy to think Royal Caribbean is just crowds, apps, fees, rules, chair hogs, and people arguing with towels. But that is not the full story. For a family on the right ship, it can feel like the easiest holiday they have ever taken. For a first-time cruiser, it can feel bigger and more exciting than they imagined. For someone who loves entertainment, it can deliver nights they genuinely remember. For someone who chooses a smaller ship for the right reason, it can feel calm, simple, and exactly right. That is the fairest truth about Royal Caribbean. It is not perfect, it is not for everyone. But when passengers choose the right version of Royal Caribbean for the holiday they actually want, the loyalty starts to make sense. Because yes, people complain. Then, somehow, a few months later, some of those same people are looking at another sailing. And that says a lot. Royal Caribbean can frustrate passengers, but it can also give them enough fun, energy, memories, and wow moments that they decide it is worth coming back. And when that happens, they understand the hype. And that is the good, the bad, and the ugly truth about Royal Caribbean. Now I want to know where you stand. Are you Team Royal Caribbean forever? Team Never Again? Team Big Ship? Team Smaller Ship? Or Team I loved it, but I still have complaints? And if you made it this far, write "cruise" for you in the comments so I can thank you personally. If this video helped you or gave you a few things to think about before booking Royal Caribbean, please hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.